Federal police in Brazil cleared President Jair Bolsonaro of committing any crime in an investigation which goal was essentially to determine whether the leader, the right-wing leader, interfered in police work or not. According to a pretty interesting document which was sent to the country's Supreme Court the Supreme Court, the Federal Police of Brazil also exempted from criminal liability former Justice Minister Sergio Moro, who accused President Jair Bolsonaro of interfering in the federal police by replacing its Director General to protect his son Flavio Bolsonaro from different corruption proofs. We're talking about a very eccentric story. The typical surprising political story of this region of Latin America, given the fact that former Justice Minister Sergio Moro was one of the main allies of President Jair Bolsonaro, to the point where the president picks him to be the Justice Minister during his initial presidential campaign, which was one of the main reasons that explained why the Brazilian people decided to vote for him. After all, we need to remember that it was Sergio Moro, the person who was conducting the Lava Jato investigation, the car wash investigation, which essentially was an operation that was basically investigating a lot of Brazilian politicians and businessmen who was involved in a lot of corrupt practices. This was the investigation that led to the arrest of former President Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva. So while Bolsonaro's son Flavio has denied any type of wrongdoing, he hasn't yet been clear of the charges. So on the other hand, it is important to remember that this investigation, this proof, was officially opened by the country's Supreme Court 2 years ago, in 2020, at the request of the country's top public prosecutor, Augusto Aras. Getting to this point, it is important to point out essentially the fact that the situation clearly benefits President Jair Bolsonaro ahead of the upcoming election. After all, we need to remember that he's a populist, and on these types of politicians, every time that there is some kind of investigation against them and they get clear of the investigation, this always plays in their benefit because they know how to capitalize these types of situations. After all, we need to remember that the common denominator of almost every single populist is his ability to polarize the country. And one of the key elements to execute a good polarization operation, let's call it that way, is when you are getting investigated by any type of branch. After all, in these types of situations, the populace can always play the victim card. And of course, Bolsonaro could say, as he has said previously, that this is nothing more than a conspiracy to overthrow him, that this is nothing more than the attempt of the opposition, of the Brazilian left wing, to get him out of power. In fact, it is quite possible that this situation could even increase his popularity ahead of the upcoming presidential election. In fact, we need to remember that over the last few weeks, the gap between Bolsonaro and Lula da Silva, the distance between both leaders, has been getting closer. Reporting from Medellin, Colombia, Luis Orozco, Newsweek.